Excited to introduce my friend here, Andy. She wrote an incredible book after battling an incredible battle. You're going to get to hear all about that from her. Something that I absolutely love. Obviously, she is a mama of 2, so you'll hear a little bit more about that, but she's also a CrossFit athlete. So I love hearing her story woven throughout, because I feel like when you find that something that you love, right? That's something that you can cling to, that clears your head, that clears your mind, and then that's kind of stripped from you all of a sudden. Like, you just feel a little bit naked and vulnerable, and that's just not fun. And for some, it's CrossFit. For some, it might be knitting. I don't know. But to hear Andy, the way she weaves it in throughout her story is absolutely phenomenal. Knitting would be yours? It used to be. See? So Andy is going to talk to you today. She's going to share her story with you today, and then we will come back together for some incredible discussion. So without further ado, Andy.
This is crazy. Let me just get my stuff up here because, I need notes. I've been here for a long time. This is so different than anything I've ever used to doing. April's totally laughing at me because she asked me, and I was like, "Do you need kisses?" And Jennifer got on me, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, let me pray about it," because this is not comfortable for me. But I knew I had this important message to share. And a year ago, at this time, I was writing my book, like Jennifer said, and it was this story about my journey and how I was finding this renewal after a trauma that I went through. And I feel like, we can all relate to trauma. And just so that, I know it sounds like a big scary word, so I just want to pause and talk about what that really means. Because all it is it's this experience in your life, or maybe series of experiences, that leave behind this negative emotional impression, right? So some of us, I know there are women in this room who have big traumas that they've dealt with. And then I know there are women in this room who are like, I don't know if my trauma is even big enough to be considered trauma. And then there's maybe women who didn't even realize that these experiences that give them this negative emotional reaction were actually triggered by the trauma. So we all have trauma, is basically what I'm trying to say. If you're human, you have it. And I think, although we can't relate to each other's specific situations, I think we can all relate to feeling broken or damaged by the trauma that we've been through. Let's see here. So I want everyone in this room to know, through these words that I'm going to talk to you about, that you are not damaged. And I know this because I used to believe I was damaged, but actually it was through this experience and through everything that I learned along the way that I realized I was actually growing into something better than I was before. And that was empowering, right? So by the end of this talk, I hope that you guys feel that same way about your thing and what you went through. But to give you some insight onto what I went through, I'm going to ask you to do a visualization with me. And it's not going to be that weird, I promise. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and just take a big deep breath with me, inside and out. I'll bring you into my story. All right, imagine you are sitting crisscross in the middle of a hospital bed. Your husband is half sitting on the edge of the bed next to you, sort of behind you. You feel fine, nothing hurts. You're not even sure why you're still here. You just came in for a bad migraine, and now it's gone. But still, you've complied with test after test, blood work, ultrasounds, and scans. Your room has filled with family who've trickled in throughout the day. Everyone is lighthearted and catching up, but it all stops abruptly when a tall woman with curly white hair and a coat walks in the room. You're anxious to hear what all the tests revealed, but you have to wait for the 3 or 4 other white coats to file in the small room and find their place lined up behind her. She starts to talk with lots of big, formal, doctory words, but then she says something that makes sense. Brain tumor. Your first thought is, okay, we can handle a tumor, we'll just take it out. But then she goes on to tell you that it's a malignant tumor. So you verify. It's cancer? She nods her head yes, and the room gets heavy. Brain cancer. You start to reel everything in your mind about what this means and how this will impact your kids. You see their faces in your mind, and the first thing you blurt out into the silence is, am I going to live long enough to raise my kids? The head doctor doesn't quite know what to say, but you see one of the doctors standing behind her look to the door and wipe a tear. The head doctor finally replies, letting you know that a neurosurgeon will be visiting you next. Stunned, you nod with a blank stare, and all the doctors start filing out in the same order they came in. Before the door even shuts behind them, you ask your family for some alone time. And without a word, they all file out behind the doctors. The room is so silent, it's deafening. You can feel the heat coming off your husband still sitting next to you. You turn to him and start to say you're sorry. But before you can finish, he pulls you into his chest, and you both fall apart in tears. All right, open your eyes. That's intense, right? So what's even more intense is that neurosurgeon who came to visit us after told me that this cancerous brain tumor was inoperable. And then later I would learn that even with a full resection, if it was operable, that I would only have a 1 in 3 chance of surviving 10 years. Not long enough to raise your kids. And so now what, right? And that's what trauma does. It just like shakes up your whole world and leaves you totally disoriented. So how I dealt was I broke out of the hospital before they wanted to start treatment, and we took my family to Disneyland. Because I knew things were going to get crazy for us, and I just wanted to have this time of like intention and like positivity and joyfulness before things got hard for us. And how my mom dealt, she's back in the room over there, just so you guys know, Adrian. She was very different, and I think as us moms can relate, like I can too, but being her daughter, I was just like, Mom. But as a mom, when something's up with our kids, like we don't take no for an answer. We don't take inoperable for an answer, and we go into mom mode, right? So she called around for second opinions and was searching for another option for us, and she found Dr. Sinai, who is known to remove difficult brain tumors. And so I thought it was a long shot, but she took it upon herself to call in my old scans and all of that stuff and kind of kidnapped me so that she could actually get them. She needed me there, and drove me to Barrow, where Dr. Sinai was, and hand them in. And she was in cahoots with his assistant somehow, like she worked out this thing, because he was really high in demand, so I didn't even know how this was even happening. But she was like, yeah, you give this to me by lunchtime and I'll give it to the doctor and he'll call you back by the end of the day. And I was like, yeah, great, it's a neurosurgeon. But he did call me back, and we talked, and he said, I've looked at your scans, and I think that not only is your tumor operable, but I think I can remove it all. And so I was like, let's do this. Like I just felt like this was divine intervention, right? Because there was this treatment plan that I had originally, and then somehow I got connected with this like only person who could really do the surgery that I needed. And I was all in, but I knew it was going to be a risky surgery because it's brain surgery. And because the original neurosurgeon wouldn't even attempt it. With brain cancer, it affects the brain tissue itself. So like I had a chunk of my brain actually removed. And so I was like, what am I gonna be like when I wake up? Am I gonna be me? Something gonna go wrong? Like, what's gonna happen? So I wrote these letters to my kids the night before the surgery. And I had been writing them to them in journals since they were born, because I'm not great at baby books, and so I was just like, I'll write them little notes, here and there. So this was important to me that I wrote to them that night before surgery, because I felt like this would be my last entry as me if things didn't go how I hoped they would. So thankfully, though, the surgery was a success, and it was this amazing experience. I remember waking up in pure euphoria. I've never felt, I don't know if anyone's ever felt like what that feels like, but I never had. And I woke up and I was just so grateful just to be alive. I was just like praising God, like, thank you, I'm here, I made it. And so, I don't know if it's just like something I made up in my head or if something they say all the time on TV or something, but I'm like, can you move your feet? I'm tasking, I'm telling myself. And so I start like moving my feet, like wondering if I'm paralyzed. And so then it's like, what about, your legs, and like move all the way up, and like your hands. So I'm just like so excited, right? And then I heard the nurse in the bed over, because there's like just this thin sheet between everyone who's coming out of surgery. And she's yelling at this patient next to me who had brain surgery as well. And she's like, do this and move that, and can you hear me? And I'm like, can you hear me? I'm like doing all this stuff she's telling him to do. So knowing that I could actually do that stuff, I was like, yes, I'm like able, right? I'm physically able. But then I was like, am I mentally here? So I haven't even said a word yet. Like, this is all going on in my head. So I saw this poster across my bed, and I was like, let me pick out a letter and see if I can say the letter to myself. And so I did that. And then I read a word, and then I read a whole sentence. So I was like, I'm back. Like, this is good. We just like escaped everything. And I did have a couple minor deficits because, it's brain surgery. So I had like some swelling in my brain, which caused my left hand to feel numb and weak. So I needed help cutting my food and tying my shoes for a little bit. And I had seizures as well, which were super scary. But I was just confident that medication and time, all of these things would just like, take care of themselves and everything would be good. But 5 weeks later, and after I made so much progress in my recovery, I got a surgical infection. So they had to go back in and do another brain surgery and like clean out that cavity and put everything back. And then I was on IV port for antibiotics for several months, and then a year of antibiotics after that. And I just felt like all my progress was totally wasted. But the worst part about that and this relapse was that the seizures came back. And those were probably the scariest part for me. And just to give you an idea of how these impacted me, on one afternoon, I was in my living room with my family, my kids and my husband, and I felt this familiar aura come over my body. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have a seizure. So I told my husband, I started running to our bedroom so the kids wouldn't see. But the last thing I remember is my arm like involuntarily flying up, my feet coming out from under me, and then my cheek hitting the carpet. And then just darkness. So as I was waking up, my husband propped me up in the door jamb because I almost made it. And he started asking me all of these simple questions to try and help me like come to and be back. Because I was postdictal, which means your brain is kind of reorganizing itself, so you're not quite there yet. And one of the questions he asked me, because I couldn't find my voice, I couldn't respond to him. So he pointed to our kids, whose heads were popping up over the backside of the couch because they'd seen it. And he said, can you tell me their names? And I couldn't remember their names. Like, I named them, like I grew them, they're mine. And I didn't understand him, but I couldn't say things. And it took a little bit for it to come back, and I was okay, but I started spiraling, right? Because I was thinking like, when is the next seizure gonna come? I had all of this anxiety about that, and then depression, because if the seizures come, I lose my mind for good. Like, I know what it's like now to not know my own kids, and to have like to be locked in this body that's not cooperating. And if the seizures keep coming back or anytime, does that mean that my cancer is back, and does that mean I'm dying? So like I was spiraling, like far. And I just feel like that was this moment where it all just kind of crashed down on me at once, right? So, can anyone relate to like that spiraling when something goes wrong? Yeah, just kind of like everything else, just kind of, your mind just goes on to the next thing and the next thing, and you just kind of are down at the very bottom. So do we call that rock bottom, right? So, I want to invite you to square off with whatever that event was in your life that left you spiraling. Every table should have worksheets, so I want you guys to go ahead and grab one. And the first step to actually squaring off with this event or this trauma is to actually acknowledge that it is trauma. Okay, so I want you to identify the life event or series of events that still feels like a kick to the stomach and drops your heart. The one that makes you feel broken or damaged. And I know it might stir up some negative emotions to materialize it on a piece of paper, but don't worry, this isn't where we'll leave it. You can see there's more questions, and by the end of this, that piece of paper, I think, is going to tell the story of how freaking strong you are, okay? So, take some time to finish the sentence. The experience that made me feel damaged was what? Maybe it was also a health issue. Maybe it was an assault. You lost a loved one, a childhood bully. Maybe it was your childhood in general. Just broke down, gotten in the way of what you wanted for your life. I mean, has it been more than like a year or 2 years or maybe 10 years or a lifetime? I get it. I get it. Because we've all heard the phrase, time heals all wounds, right? So we just think if we can just get back to being our old selves before that event and just do all the things that the old us did before that happened, then eventually like all of these open wounds and things that feel broken about us will just heal in the background, right? Like we just get on with our lives. But the thing about ignoring our traumas is that it doesn't work. But what does work is understanding, like I said before, that we are growing into something new. And for me, this realization happened at church in the middle of a sermon that I was just kind of like passively listening to. But he said this thing that just kind of like dropped me. And I feel like, have you ever been in church when the pastor's talking and you feel like he just wrote that for you or he's been spying on you? Like, that's what I felt like the sermon was like. I call it the New Again sermon because I remember it so vividly because at this one point he stops and he says, you are not your experiences or the labels you carry. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's so obvious, right? You're not your experiences, you're so much more than that. That is not your identity. That's not where your identity is found, or in your labels that you carry. And up until that point, I had been letting my trauma and all these labels of like brain cancer survivor and epileptic and PTSD sufferer and anxiety-ridden person with depression, like that's who I thought I was. But when he said you're not your experiences or the labels that have been placed on you, it kind of made me feel empowered. Like, I almost was even grateful for what I had been through because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have learned so much about myself and how I was growing and who I was becoming any other way. It was the greatest teacher. I was like, fast forward on learning in life. And let's see. Oh, and so then it hit me. When he said that you are not your experiences or the labels you carry, I was like, okay, so if I'm not the old me, like that person I was before cancer, because that person is, I can't be that person anymore, right? And if I'm not my experiences or the labels I carry, then what am I, right? Well, it hit me. I'm new. Every single day you wake up, you get another chance, and you get to grow yourself in new ways and become something better than before. So that's just like this mindset shift and this perspective that totally was a catalyst for a lot. I had to change my perspective from this fixed mindset that the old me was the best me to a growth mindset that who I was becoming would be better. And guys, most importantly, through this, I had to grow in my faith because I think maybe you can relate when you go through these times when you're just like, why am I going through this? And you're kind of like battling God a little bit and maybe pulling yourself away. I realized I can't pray these meek little prayer requests anymore. I can't be like, oh God, if it's in your will you please heal me? I was like, oh no. Like I had to pray bold prayers because God is capable. Like he is huge, he's capable of everything. So why should I ask? As his daughter, why should I not ask? And I declared my intentions to heal, and I started to visualize the Holy Spirit at work inside me, healing my body, healing my head, my mind, and healing my heart. And then that grew our relationship back to a place that was stronger. And these perspective shifts, like I said before, were the catalyst for my long-term healing, because when you change your perspective on life, you change your reality. So think about this. I think this is so cool. So when you look at your life in a different way, then you start to have different thoughts about things going on around you, or your experiences. And then when you have different thoughts about these things, then you have different feelings about these things that are different. And then you have, as a result, different emotions in your life than you would have had before. And these different emotions release chemicals in your body. So just by changing your thoughts, you're like literally changing your biology. You're changing your whole reality. And that's the power of our thoughts. But it takes constant practice. I mean, that's healing from the inside out, right? So it takes constant practice though. So I had to develop some habits and accountability, and I want to just give you guys a couple examples so that you're like, what happened? Did you just magically hear the sermon and these perspectives all changed? And I had to practice some things to stay on track with my healing. And one thing was really simple for me that I started doing is every morning I would just say, thank you for this day, thank you for my life, thank you for my loved ones. And that's all I say first thing in the morning. And thank you for this day, as in that I am here in this day, in my existence, and I made it, right? I get another chance. And then thank you for my life and all the things, the good and the bad, that have led me to today and right now in my life. And then thank you for my loved ones who are my why. And starting my day off in gratitude, it grounds me in positivity. And I feel like that just kind of motivates me to keep going and to keep pushing through the hard parts. Another habit that helps me stay on track with something that Jennifer mentioned is my gym time, and but not alone gym time. So I know she mentioned CrossFit, and that's like what I do, and I love it because it's in this group. But I think anything where you're in a group of people, where you're held accountable to them for showing up, and they notice when you're not there, and then when you do the hard things in the gym with them, and all of a sudden they're there when you're doing the hard things in life too. It's this community that you're building out of a habit, and physical fitness, I think, just can't be understated as part of the healing process, because it just feels good. It feels good, maybe not in the middle of the workout, but like after, when you realize you accomplished something really cool or really hard, or that you're getting better over time, I think that's like a booster, because sometimes we can't see how we're improving mentally, right, along the way. But if we can see that we're moving the needle a little bit with our physical bodies, then I think that's helpful to know that we are getting better and we are growing. And then, let's see here. Oh, speaking of accountability and support, I knew I needed a professional guide to help me understand all these crazy thoughts that were still spiraling, and they would still get me, and to help me process everything I had been going through. So I got a therapist, and I didn't want one, to be honest. And I fought it, no matter how much my family was encouraging me to do it, and friends, and I just felt like a therapist would dig up all this negativity and like anxiety, and I was doing really good at pushing it down to where I couldn't really see it anymore, but it would bubble up, and I was triggered all the time. So I knew that I needed to seek support, and I did talk therapy with a woman of faith, because I needed to talk about God, but I've also had other friends who have had a lot of success with things like EMDR, and there's other therapies. But my point is that if you haven't, if you're still easily triggered by what you went through, that you do find a professional guide to help you navigate that. And so I just want to encourage you that it's, it could be scary just at the beginning, but over time I feel like it's just such a valuable part of that long-term healing and accountability. So, and regardless of how you've gotten to this moment in your own healing, you've learned a lot along the way, right? You learn things about yourself and what you want for your life. And so I want you now to look back at these worksheets and look at what you wrote down earlier. Under that, write how that trauma has changed you for the better. What has your experience taught you about who you really are and what you really want for your life? Take some time to finish the sentence. My experience taught me what? Maybe it's that I'm capable of this, or that I won't settle for that. Write down as many things as you can think of. You can keep writing if you want, that's cool. But I want to talk about now using what you learned, what you just wrote down, for good. So I think there is a big purpose to your big experience if you are bold enough to share your story, to own it, and use what you've learned for good. Whether it's mentorship or sharing what you've learned with somebody who might be going through something similar. It doesn't have to be this big grand thing, but I think just being open to not closing off your experience to the world kind of helps us all, right? So someone actually shared their story with me when I was at my lowest point, and it was just this they didn't tell me all the details. I didn't need to know all that. I just needed to know that they struggled too. And I knew where they were now. They were happy, they were thriving, and I was at a point where I didn't even think there would be a time where I could smile and actually mean it anymore. So just seeing that they got through to the other side gave me hope that if it's possible for them, then it might be possible for me. And if it may be possible, then I should just keep trying, right? So I feel like that was motivating for me. And when we use what we learned for good, I think it's important because then we're in constant practice of our power over the past. Because by changing that from a negative emotion, we're creating positive emotions with others through it. So it's kind of our way to recreate our story, to change it into something good. So how can you use your experience for good? So let's look back at our worksheets and finish the sentence. I will use what I've learned for good by. Maybe it's making a specific positive change, encouraging a particular person, or doing that thing that's been on your heart. Be specific. Who wrote that down was like, yeah, but I'm not actually going to do that. You guys, it's so important that you do. And the reason I think it is because, like I said earlier, it gives that purpose, but it also gives you the power. You get power over your path by doing that, and giving you purpose to your pain, and that's empowering, right? That takes that hard thing in our life and it makes it something that is impactful and useful in the world. So the truth is, right? Every single person in this room has dealt with intense pain that maybe still haunts them, pops up from time to time. But the thing is that I really want you to get out of this is that you are capable of overcoming, and that it's not to say that there's going to be it's all going to be roses and sunshine, right? There's going to be hard days. That's just part of it. You go 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and that's just this trajectory that we're on when we're in this healing path. But the important thing is to just keep going and remember that you can try again the next day. And my greatest hope and wish and prayer for you today is that today is the day that you finally see your trauma in a new perspective. Knowing that every new day, when you choose the growth over the damage, that you are continually becoming something new and improved. That means you, everyone in this room, are you again. Okay? Thank you so much, you guys. I forget if I was supposed to say, oh yeah. So, here, this is my email address. If anyone wants to email me and talk about anything, or if you have a question for me about anything, I'm so happy to be there for you. And if you rather DM me or something else, then that's cool too. And that's just how you can get in touch with me. All right?